Okay. I just like to welcome everybody tonight to this special interview, which we have with Tori Shaw. Tori is a homeschool mom, and she has 4 children. And she's very active also in her ministry, which she founded called the Non-Forgotten Ministry. And we work together for many hours in front of Planned Parenthood in our city, Winston-Salem, North Carolina, as sidewalk advocates. And we have become good friends. And I'm really excited that Tori take the time to be with us today. And I want to pass taking the interview on to our Pastor Alan Feltzot. So take it on.
Right. Good evening, everyone. And a special big welcome to Tori Shaw. I think this is our first time meeting. And just getting to learn a little bit about you and about your ministry, the Not Forgotten Ministries. I did find that you have a website, theyarenotforgotten.com. Is that right?
Yep.
Theyarenotforgotten.com. Right. And you've also written a few books, which are sold on Amazon.com.
Yeah.
One is Lead with Love. I Had a Secret for 17 Years and Free Indeed. I don't know if you've written other books. Those are the ones that
That's it.
that's a lot already. And I know you've got a lot of different activities and programs and offerings with your ministry, and I'll give you a chance to talk about that, in a minute. So welcome, Tori, and if you'd like to just go ahead and introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about your story and how you started Not Forgotten Ministries.
All right. Well, I'm Tori, and I just turned 40. And I have a husband and 4 kids ranging from 14 to 5 years old. And I homeschool all of them. And we've always homeschooled. I used to be a teacher before I had kids, and just felt really led to teach my own children instead of putting them in the public school. So we've been homeschooling all these years. But when I was 16, I had an abortion. I got pregnant, didn't even know I was pregnant. I was just really sick. And my mom took me to the doctor, and the doctor's the one that told me I was pregnant. And the doctor's also the one that made me the abortion appointment. And I went the very next day and had an abortion at 16. I didn't even know I was pregnant for 24 hours. And it was in Winston-Salem, which is where Bergie and I have done sidewalk advocacy. It wasn't at the Planned Parenthood. It was at a different clinic that's not a clinic anymore. But when I left the clinic that day after having that abortion, I was not the same person that I was when I went in that day. And I didn't talk about it for 17 years. I never spoke about it, not to my mom who took me, not to the boy that got me pregnant, not to anybody. No friends knew. I never spoke of it. I was so ashamed, and I just hated myself for what I had done. And I couldn't talk about it. And I just spiraled downward. I got really heavy into drugs and alcohol. I don't even know how I made it through college, honestly. I always am like, God just picked me up and carried me and put me on the other side of those years, because I don't know how I got here, because I really should not have made it. I did every drug there was to do. And it was just, I don't know. I was in such a place. I didn't want to think deeply. Like, I knew if I let myself think at all, I would get into this place of, hating myself for what I'd done. So I never thought about anything deeply. And always just wanted to be with people and let people treat me terribly, just to be around people, because I knew if I was alone, I would hate myself, and so I just spent years like that. And even I did end up marrying the boy that had gotten me pregnant when I was 16. We got married when I was 21, right after college. And I had, I started teaching, and I was, I think things were improving, but still I was drinking a lot at night in the evenings. And, we just avoided any deep thoughts of any kind. We went to church, but that was it. Like there was nothing about it that was personal. It was just kind of an activity we did every week. Um, and once I had my son, I was 25 when I had my son. And I remember I had a miscarriage right before I had him. And so I really was thinking I wouldn't be able to have kids, like that I had just ruined my chances with the abortion, and I felt like that was my punishment. But then I had my son in 2008, and my first son. And I remember just laying in the hospital bed and just looking at his little fingers and his little toes. And I had never talked to anybody about this. And just my husband had gone home to feed the dog or something. And I was there by myself with this baby. And I was just like, at that moment, I knew exactly what I had done. Like I could no longer pretend that I hadn't done something wrong or try to, not think about it or whatever. Like when I saw this baby that had just come out of me, like, I don't know, it was just surreal. Like I knew right then, okay, I'm pro-life. But that didn't mean I was willing to talk about it because I was still so ashamed of what I had done. So even though I was like, okay, this is wrong, I cannot, support abortion at all. I still wouldn't talk about it. And years went by. I finally did a Bible study with a friend. She had shared her abortion story on Facebook, and I knew I could talk to her because she wouldn't judge me since she had also had one. So I reached out to her and I did a Bible probably 8 years ago or so now. And I remember at the end of that Bible study telling her, I believe God forgives me, but I'll never. And just don't ever say never, because then something happens and now you're like writing books and stuff. But even after that, I still was not talking about it with anybody else, only her. And I guess a few years later, I had not had my daughter yet. She's 5, so I had not had her yet. But I was at church one day and the pastor was talking about, we want to go further with God in our relationship. We want to get closer to God, but it's us that's holding ourselves back. God is there. It's us. He loves us. He's, we're the ones that put the walls up and say, you can have all these things, but not this thing. I don't trust you with this thing. And I felt like he was talking to me. And I looked at my husband, who was the boy that got me pregnant at 16. And I looked at him and I said, I have to go talk to him about the abortion. And he was like, huh? Because we had never talked about it, all those years, we had never talked about it. And I was like, I'm going to go tell the pastor. So he was pretty shocked. But he went up there with me, actually. It was just surprising. And I told the pastor, when I was 16, I had an abortion, never told anybody and all these things. And he said, sometimes the best way to find freedom is to be transparent. And so I had been writing a blog for several years already, just in general. Wasn't about abortion or anything. Like I never even talked about abortion at that point. But I had been writing a blog for several years and I had a lot of followers. And so I knew if I wrote it on my blog that people would read it. And so I knew if I didn't write it that day, I wouldn't write it. So I did. And the title of that blog was I've Had a Secret for 17 Years. And then I later used that same title for my book when I told my whole story. But that night when I shared that, like it took a lot of guts for me to push the button, because I had never told most people in my life. I mean, my mom knew, my husband knew, and now this pastor knew, but that was it. And so when I shared it, I just really expected this backlash or people just being awful to me or being so judgmental. And there could have been people that felt that way. I don't know. But the people that reached out to me were it was opposite of what I thought. People reached out to me with such kindness and such grace and just said, thank you so much for being willing to share your story. And, we're proud of you and all of these things, or I'm so sorry for what you've been through. And then of course I had several that reached out and said, I've also had an abortion, and they wanted, to talk to me and get my input and, find healing and all of those things. So at that point, I really thought, oh, okay, I'm going to do more with this. God's going to use this and I'm going to do more. But then I got pregnant with my daughter and things happened. And so nothing really came of it right then. But you guys know, like 3 years ago, right around this time is when the Unplanned movie came out. Well, my church, the pastor that I had talked to, asked me right before the Unplanned movie came out, he asked me, would you be willing to do a video for the church and share your story, but then also talk about what it's like to walk in freedom? And so I did. And so it was like a week before the Unplanned movie came out. I shared, that with the church. And it was very difficult to watch myself on a screen telling this story because this is not something that I ever talked about. Even though I had shared it on the blog, I was still not like all talking about it all the time, And so then also as a church, like they had rented out one of the movie theaters. And so a bunch of people from our church went to see the Unplanned movie together. So I had just told my story in front of the whole church on this video. And then most of the church family is in this theater together watching this movie. And I'm sure most of you have seen the Unplanned movie. And you know that once you see that, you know what abortion is. Like, there's no question, you know what abortion is now. And I remember walking out of that theater and I was just sobbing. And I was thinking to myself, oh my gosh, they really know what I did now. Even though I had told them, it was like sugar coated in some way when it was before they had seen that maybe. And I was so covered in shame all over again. And I went home and I went in my prayer closet and I stayed there and I was like I was a wreck because I thought I had so much freedom, which I did, but the enemy was trying to destroy me, and he was trying to make me feel shame all over again. And so I went in my prayer closet and I was praying and God said to me, you have to face this head on. And so I knew what he meant. I had to figure out where I had my abortion. And because I didn't even know where it was. I knew it was in Winston-Salem, but I didn't know where. And so I texted my mom, whom I have never still talked to about this, even though I had shared that blog and everything. I had still not talked to her about it. I texted her this random question and said, do you know where I had my abortion? And she remembered the address of the place. And that just spoke to me so much because we had never talked about this. We did not live in that area. We did not go there often. So for her to remember the address told me that she had been replaying this in her mind for years as well. So it really impacted her as well, even if she didn't know it, if she wouldn't admit it. And so the next day I went and sat outside that clinic for 3 hours. I was just sobbing. It's not a clinic anymore, but I was just sobbing and praying and listening to worship music and writing in my journal. And that is where God gave me the idea for the ministry that I have now. So it was really birthed in that parking lot. And Not Forgotten Ministries is the result of God birthing something out of something so awful in my life once I was just willing to let him have it. We started at that same time, I started doing the sidewalk advocacy, and I was, outside the clinic in Winston with Bergie and lots of other wonderful pro-life advocates. And at the same time, I was also doing some post-abortive Bible studies, and I had started one at my church. But people that have had abortions don't typically want to go to a church, because if you're having a post-abortive Bible study on Tuesday night and they show up, everybody knows they're there for that abortion study. So you can't really do it at a church unless the people are already free enough to be willing to share it with other people. So that's when I knew I had to get a place that was separate from, a church. And so we were outside the Planned Parenthood all the time. And at the time, there was no other pro-life organizations around near that Planned Parenthood. And so I opened I opened a ministry office a block and a half away from the Planned Parenthood. So we would walk to the Planned Parenthood and do sidewalk advocacy. And then I was doing the post-abortion Bible studies there as well. And that's really how it all started. And God totally did it. Like, I just was willing, and like I felt, okay, you got to do this. And so I found a place, and then I didn't have any money, and then I was like, we got to find the money, and then suddenly I had the money. Like, it was just God just totally just did it. And then when COVID happened, lots of ministries probably really suffered with when COVID happened, and didn't really affect us financially. It didn't really harm us very much. We were really new, so we didn't have a lot of expenses and everything. But one good thing that came from COVID for us was I had been leading post-abortion Bible studies in person, and I couldn't do that anymore. So I started doing Zoom, just like we're doing now. And I was doing it with the people I had been meeting with. But as we kept doing that, I realized I can do this with anybody. And so I actually, in that same time period, was writing my own post-abortion Bible study, which is called Free Indeed. That's one of the ones you mentioned. I love all the other ones that I've seen and tried, but they all were missing something, or they were all didn't have something God had taught me. So I wrote my own, and it's called Free Indeed, and we use that for our Bible studies. But when I started doing the Zoom Bible studies, it just was incredible. Like, suddenly I wasn't just reaching women in my area, I was reaching women everywhere. We've now helped women in 32 different states and 14 different countries. And they're doing our Bible studies, they're finding healing. And then it's amazing. In 2022, we saved 8 babies just because the ladies were willing to share their stories. If they came across somebody was maybe going to have an abortion, they would say, no, let me tell you my story. And then these women would choose life. We saved 2 sets of twins that way. I mean, it's just amazing. Just by them sharing their stories, we're saving babies' lives. And then, we also started doing weekend healing retreats. We've been doing those in the spring and in the fall. They're completely free to participants, and absolutely incredible. I can't even describe how amazing they are. The freedom is incredible. And the ladies, they literally look different when they leave. They're just like 1,000 pounds have been lifted off of them, that they've been touched by the Holy Spirit. It's just a beautiful thing. And so we need to start doing more of those. We've been doing 2 per year, but we're going to try to start doing 3 this year and then 4 next year, just to keep up, because the one we had in March had 11 ladies on the waiting list. So there's just, after Roe versus Wade, so many women were triggered and realized they really need help to kind of navigate all of this, because they have all these suppressed emotions and feelings that they've tried to not think about all these years. And then the Roe v. Wade thing happens, and it's in your face all the time, and they don't know how to deal with it. And so we've had this huge influx of women who need help and are seeking freedom. And so it's really been amazing to watch how God has just taken this one. We were just doing some sidewalk advocacy, some post-abortion healing, and now it's like we're serving women all over the world. And I don't know how that happened. God did that, and I'm so grateful. But it's all Him, not me.
It's an amazing story, beautiful story. Tori, I'm just curious, when you were young, were you a very public person, like in a position where you would, run for student government, student president, or speak in public or anything of that?
No. I took dance classes and did recitals, but never, and I was not like a do it, in front of everybody type thing. I was like in the school play, but I would be in the chorus, and I wasn't like a main person. So yeah, no, this definitely out of my comfort zone to be like in the front of people. But God's given me the tools to do it, but I just am not, it's not my ideal thing to do. So
that in itself is I think an amazing testimony how how God can, use, many of us who may not think that we're going to be any type of leader or public speaking person or anything like that. I just thought about, Moses, who was called to speak in front of a lot of people, and he was, protesting that he wasn't a good speaker.
Right.
But he ended up, God called him and he found a way to do it, right? So
That's right.
that is an amazing testimony. So when you the first time when you decided to tell your pastor, so that time you were sitting with your boyfriend?
He was my husband at that time,
At
but
that
yeah.
time, okay, yeah. So, and you decided to go up and tell him. So did you already have a pretty close relationship with the pastor? Did you trust him completely, or what was your, and you must have had a feeling that you could trust him enough that he would receive what you were about to tell him, right?
I don't know if I did or not. Honestly, I had been going to that church for a while and had been under his preaching for a while, and so I think I trusted him to some degree. I didn't know him personally very well, but I think it didn't even matter because like I knew God was talking to me, and so I knew like I had to go up there, and so it really didn't. I don't even know if I even thought about who it was I was telling.
Yeah.
He wasn't the lead pastor either, so I hadn't known him as much as the others. But also he was a very personable person, so I think he made me more comfortable. But no, I mean, this is like, think about the one thing you never want to say out loud, and now it's like my platform, like what I talk about all the time, and it's like sometimes I really am like, what am I doing? Like because I never wanted to talk about this, but I do believe God spoke to me through him by saying the best way to find freedom is to be transparent, because that's just what I am now. And there's so not hiding anything, there's nothing that you can come to me and say because I'm just an open book, which is so weird to me from what I used to be, because I was always so careful what I would say because I didn't want any conversation to lead into an abortion topic because I would not talk about it. So it's just interesting how God has totally changed that.
Well, it sounds like that pastor was very humble to God and understanding, right? I imagine there could be some situations where somebody would not have received it properly.
I'm sure.
Might have been judgmental towards you, even sometimes when we find those kind of things in churches. But it sounds like God had really prepared that person for you, and you could just go up there and share your heart. So your husband has been this whole process that you've been going through, and it sounds like it was a process, a journey, a spiritual journey. Your husband's kind of, you felt like he's been kind of going along with you on the same train along the way?
Well, it's interesting at first. I think I was dragging him along with me,
Reluctantly.
I had done that Bible study about 8 years ago. And so I had found a level of healing then, but I still wasn't willing to talk about it. And so he's never done any of that, like when I talked to him with the pastor and when he was there, that was like the first time he and I had talked about it. And he wasn't even, I wasn't talking to him. I was talking to the pastor. And then of course we talked a lot more about it later. But when I started the ministry, he was supportive of me sharing the story. And he knew I could help other women and he wanted me to do that. But he was kind of he was kind of worried or nervous because of the political aspect of this topic. But as we've gone along and we've grown closer to the Lord and individually and as a couple, and he's kind of taken more ownership of this story as well. He's my biggest supporter now. And he's all about me doing whatever needs to be done. So yeah, it took him a little longer, but God totally worked in his heart too. And he's actually probably, we're working on it, but he's going to be writing the men's version of the Free Indeed book that we have. So we'll be able to have some men's post-abortion Bible studies too.
That's great. Yeah, I think it's not that unusual where you would have like in a couple, the husband and wife may be at different levels in terms of their their passion towards God or towards, some particular mission. I think that's normal, but the fact that there was probably really that love there that, he could still humble himself and then eventually come along with you on that particular path.
Yeah.
Really a wonderful thing. So I don't have any idea, how many abortions take place in this country, even on a daily basis or an annual basis. I didn't even look at the numbers, and I kind of don't want to really. I know it's a lot. And from your story, from the time that you went into the doctor and found out you were pregnant, right, to the time that you had an abortion, what was the time period there? Did you have time to really think about it and talk to people about it, or what was really the time period there?
No, so I was in the doctor's office when she told me I was pregnant, and she herself was like 8 months pregnant, that doctor. And I remember her saying, like, well, you can have an abortion and blah, blah, blah. And I was still trying to even process the fact that she had said I was pregnant. So I don't even remember, most of that conversation. My mom was in the room and she was just agreeing with the doctor. And so the doctor made that appointment then. Like, she went out of the room, made the appointment, and came back and told us the appointment information. And I remember looking at her and saying, "You must hate me, making an abortion appointment for me, and you're so pregnant." And she said, "No, I would have do the same thing if I were 16." And I think that kind of made me think, oh, she's pregnant, and she would say that she would do this too. So I think that kind of made me think it was okay. But I ended up having to go to the hospital that night and get fluids because I had been so sick. That's why I went to the doctor anyway. And so I went to the hospital, and they give you like Phenergan, and I don't know if anybody's taken Phenergan before, but it knocks you out, like you're just asleep. And so I went to sleep, and then the next morning my mom took me to the clinic. So it was not even 24 hours that I knew I was pregnant, and no one talked to me. I don't remember anyone talking to me about my choices outside of the clinic or in the clinic. Like, if there were those conversations, I don't recall them. But yeah, I didn't have time to even process it for myself or even think about it or, consider any options. It was like, we're getting this taken care of right now. And I do wonder how, how it would be if I had even had a day or two to think about it. But
do you think that's kind of how it's done on purpose, that it's done on purpose that way so that people don't get a chance to think about it, and then they can kind of push young ladies into having an abortion, and then of course they make money off of the procedures, that kind of stuff?
It wouldn't surprise me at all. I don't know if that was the intention of the doctor that I visited, but I do think that happens quite a bit just in general, like with Planned Parenthood and other abortion facilities. They're definitely, they say they do counseling, but that's not, I wouldn't call it that. They might tell you whatever they have to say, but they are definitely pushing women to get the abortion, and they're not being honest about the regret that comes and the other difficult emotions that follow.
Yeah, when I think about also in the medical industry, you have doctors who do things like gender affirming care, and things like that. It sounds like, they care about you, they're affirming you. It's but it reminds me that Satan is the father of lies, right?
Yeah.
And that the first lie was in the Garden of Eden, when he whispers to Eve, right, to something to do, and he must have been also very convincing and very smooth in his talking, and just led her in the wrong direction. So in terms of with the whole abortion push, or encouraging women to be abortion, what do you think is the most deceptive aspect of that, or what is it that young women are told that is misleading or just untrue?
I think it's said in various ways, but the idea behind that abortion is empowering women is probably the biggest lie. Whether it's, oh, you can take care of this because you won't have a good life, or if you have this baby, it's going to ruin your life, or you won't be able to go to college, or you won't, whatever lie they're told. Most of those things are kind of backed by this: we want to empower you, we want to help you have a good life, and all of these things. And I mean, I don't know if those people really believe that or not, but abortion does anything but empower. I mean, it destroys. Not only does it destroy the baby, but it destroys the mom. And I'm sure there are women out there that would say otherwise, and I would venture to say that they just haven't acknowledged it yet. I think abortion destroys all women to some degree.
What would you say are the biggest impacts in terms of emotional and maybe also physical impacts of people who go down that road of abortion?
Well, there's a statistic that says women who have had abortions are 80% more likely to have mental illness, various kinds, especially depression is a huge thing that women who have had abortions deal with. Suicidal thoughts, drugs, alcohol addictions, all of those things tend to follow. Lots and lots of women will have that. For physically, of course, there are, things that happen to women physically and they're unable to have children, or they end up with some type of, problem, with their, bodies physically. But also, I think there's a high likelihood that women will allow themselves to be physically and emotionally abused after they've had abortions. I know for me, I just let people treat me however, because I just assumed that's what I deserved. And now when I look back, I'm like, why did I let them treat me like that? But in the state of mind I was in, I hated myself and I hated what I had done, and I felt like I deserved to be treated that way. And I think it's more common with women who've had abortions than people realize.
Hmm. So for those who are able to make that decision, to keep the baby, what do they learn about life, or how do they feel after they've made that decision? I know, the pregnancy is difficult anyway, and especially if they don't have a husband. But how do they end up? How do they deal with it typically? What do they learn from that?
The ladies that we've worked with that have chosen life, they come back later and are just so overjoyed and like filled with gratitude. I have one that I've been in contact with this week, that her name is Darcy, and she's from the United Kingdom. She had twins, and she had never had a relationship with God before. But when I started talking to her, one of the ladies that had been in our Bible study connected with her somehow on Facebook, told her her story, and then put her in contact with me because she wasn't sure exactly what else to say. So I was talking to her, and she chose life. I was texting her while my kid was playing basketball, but she chose life, and she ended up having the twins. And so, like today, she's been emailing me, texting me, asking me, "How do I pray? I am so glad God put you in my life. I am so grateful. I know it was him. It had to be him. How do I pray?" And then she's asking me, "How do I study the Bible?" So there's all these levels to, not only are they so grateful they have these babies and they can't even believe they were considering not having them, but then also God uses it in a way that shows him he is real. He is looking out for them. He cares for them. And it's like making them want to grow in their faith and learn more about him. So I don't know for everybody, but for the most of the ladies that we've worked with, they can't even believe they were considering it. And the reason I think that is because when they are in that crisis situation, they're not thinking clearly. Just like any of us in a crisis situation, our minds are not like they are now, where we can think of all the sides and everything. When you're in a crisis, you're like, oh, you're trying to figure it out real fast and you don't know what to do, and people are pressuring you and all these things. And then now when they look back, they're like, what was I thinking? But they weren't thinking. So
Yeah. So I imagine doing whenever you speak out truth, anybody speaks out truth, it seems like there's you almost automatically attract some attack, right,
Yeah.
from the other side. Have you ever been either verbally or physically attacked, either when you're doing your sidewalk advocacy or in your ministry?
Yeah, I mean, when we would do sidewalk advocacy, there was several times where we would be yelled at or, things thrown at us or whatever. I remember one time specifically, I was out there with my son, and I think he was 12 at the time, and somebody drove by right in front of him, stopped the car, and called me a very bad name in front of my kid. And so like, yes, I've definitely experienced that. I also have a video from live action that tells my story, and it's been seen 3.5 million times. And it is, I mean, it's got thousands and thousands of comments, and some of those comments are awful. But I just laugh because I know it's the enemy. I know Satan's trying to discourage me. I know my spirit is ruffling their feathers, and I don't even care. And now there was a time where every negative word would have really upset me because I used to care so much what people think, and God's totally wiped that. Like, I don't even care anymore. But yeah, it's yes, definitely. People do not like what I have to say. Even pro-life people don't like what I have to say, because I tell pro-life people to be kind and loving and gentle, because you don't attract bees with vinegar, like you push people away when you're mean and hateful. That's the reason I wrote the Lead with Love book that I wrote, because that's what it's all about, is leading with love and treating people with kindness. And yeah, so definitely have experienced people being rude to me, people being hateful, or like, you just deal with whatever. But then also just attacks from the enemy too. My family is attacked, our ministry is attacked, but we just keep on going because we know that's what God wants for us to do. He's going to keep helping us, survive all the different things that we endure. And we're just doing it. Keep trucking.
Yeah, in one way, I want to see it as kind of a confirmation that you're on God's side when
Yeah.
you get attacked, because people who are on God's side tend to bring out the demons
Yeah,
who come against you. So
absolutely.
I think yeah, that's a wonderful thing. I did also see that you have a YouTube channel,
Mhm.
right? I don't know what's on there except for one song. I did see it, the Not Forgotten song, which is
Yeah.
really very beautiful, moving song. So if anybody hasn't seen that yet, I guess you could just look for Not Forgotten Ministries YouTube channel. Look
Yeah, we don't have tons of stuff on there. We're growing that. But that song that you're talking about was written by a 13-year-old, and it's sung by her as well. She wrote it for our ministry, and so yeah,
How was she that age when she sang it?
yeah,
Wow, she's
she's incredible. Yeah, and it's her brother playing the guitar with her. But yeah, it's beautiful. We have a lot of people who just support in different various ways like that. She felt led to do that, and she did. And we use it at our retreats. As part of it, we have the ladies write letters to their babies, and that's a song that we play during that time. And so yeah, it's beautiful. But there's also one video on there that I'd love for you guys to see. It's called Two Paths. And my friend Leah, she's younger than me, but at both of us, when we were 16, we got pregnant. And I chose abortion. She chose open adoption. And so the video was made to show our paths. So what I chose abortion, she chose adoption, and then kind of the lives we've led because of it, and then how God has healed us. And we didn't know each other until now. But yeah, that's a powerful one to see, because it shows you the difference that can happen, so.
Yeah, I have to go back and watch that one as well. Yeah, the one with the Not Forgotten song has some really beautiful photographs of children and babies.
Mhm.
I don't know if you where you got all those pictures, but anyway, there.
Yeah, that was just on Canva. I just
Okay.
made the video on Canva, so they're just free images. But yeah, I have lots of images I could share of babies we've saved too that are beautiful too.
Yeah.
So
I mean, just to see that, you can feel when you see young children and babies, that kind of original innocence and beauty from God in there.
yeah.
It was very moving. So yeah. So Tori, maybe is there any final thing you'd like to share before maybe we have a few minutes to open it up to any questions? Any final?
Sure. I'll just share kind of where we are now. God is totally kind of, when we started, we were doing sidewalk advocacy and post-abortion healing. And I went to a pro-life conference and heard that 9 out of 10 women don't know where to find healing, or even that healing is an option. And so when I was at that conference, I just felt like God was confirming in me that we really needed to focus on the post-abortion healing, because there's just not many people doing that. I know lots of pregnancy care centers offer it, but people aren't coming saying, I need healing, like they don't know. We have totally just focused only on the post-abortion healing at this point, and we do help save babies through that, through that ministry as well. But that's our main goal now. So we actually just moved out of our building in Winston that was a block and a half from Planned Parenthood, and we are hoping to get a house, like a large house that we can have our retreats in and our ministry office in. That's our goal. That's what we're praying for. We found the perfect one, and we're just waiting on God to see what happens. I've seen him do big things before, and so I'm not putting anything past him. But that's one thing that if anybody is a prayer warrior, be in prayer for us for that, because we do our retreats and we have to rent houses, and that's a lot of money to rent a house big enough for that many people. And so it would just really be great for us to have our own location for retreats and our ministry office together. So.
Have you thought about, or are you interested in doing something where somebody who needs like a period of time to recover and would want to actually stay, not necessarily at a retreat, but just come for a few days or a couple of weeks or something?
Yeah. I actually want to call the place the secret place. If you know Psalm 91:1, he who dwells in the secret place is what, in the shadow of God Almighty. Like, I just want it to be a place where it is this place where you're in God's presence. And so, yeah, I'm open to anything with that. Anything God wants to do, I'm open for. So.
Excellent. Thank you. Okay. Anybody would like to ask a question of Tori? Paolo, you can unmute yourself when it's time to ask your question. Yeah, go ahead, Paolo.
I was wondering about the healing part. When you do that, do you do through Zoom?
Mm-hmm. So we have online Bible studies that we do through Zoom, and we meet 10 weeks in a row. We send them the book for free, the book that I wrote. We send them that for free, along with like a little goodie bag that's basically just little knickknacks. But the women are like so amazed. They just can't, they feel so loved by just this little goodie bag of stuff and the book. And then we spend 10 weeks together. We have a group of 5 or less. I don't want it to be a big group. I want it to be intimate so that we can all get to know each other and have plenty of time to share with each other. And we meet one night a week for 2 hours typically. And so it started with just me doing it, but now we have 4 women leading. So one of them is in Ohio. I'm in North Carolina. One of them is in Ohio. One is in Mississippi, and the other is in New Mexico. And she actually works with women that are in Africa. So her study is only with women from Africa, but the others are with women from wherever. We've had women from New Zealand and Peru and all these different places. As long as they can figure out a time that works with their schedule. We've had a lady that got up at 6 o'clock in the morning so that she could be a part of our studies. And then we've had them all over the country, and we have one lady in Oregon that's going to start leading them so that we could have that time zone over there covered, because we right now it's not always great for people that are on the West Coast with the timing. So we're trying to get all the time zones covered. So, but yes, you wouldn't believe the amount of healing that happens, even though we're not face to face.
Right.
I know there is some barrier, you can't be face to face, but also a lot of people are much more willing to do it on Zoom because they're in their house and they're comfortable and they feel like, well, if I want to, I can just exit this, but they don't, they stay, they come back every time. And a lot of the women will do the study twice because they're in such a different place at the end of the study than they were when they started. And it's really beautiful to see the transformations. And some of these women have since started pregnancy centers in their areas, or they've started leading studies. All the women that are leading studies with us have been participants prior. So yeah, it's amazing to see how God opened that window for me, because like I couldn't even, that never crossed my mind until COVID happened, and I had to do it. And then I was like, oh, wait a minute. And so, yeah.
I have one more question. When
Yeah.
you go to another country, I imagine you do that by Zoom.
Mm-hmm.
How do you handle the language barrier?
So currently it's only if they speak English, or, if they are able to translate it. We are in the process of having the Free Indeed book translated in Spanish. We hope to have that done this year. And we actually already have a few ladies who are ready to lead it in Spanish. So we will have that. And then who knows what languages God might desire for it to be in. We'll do whatever he wants us to do. But as of right now, we're still reaching all over, even if it's somebody's second language. We had a lady in Germany that was a part of it for two different studies, and English was her second language, but she was not a believer when she started. I remember her asking me, how do I get a Bible? And I didn't know but how to tell her because she's in Germany. But I told her about the app on her phone and everything. So she was reading, I think, the Bible in German.
Yeah.
And then, but our study is in English, and she was definitely able to comprehend everything we were talking about. And we have a quote on our website from her that says, "This ministry literally saved my life," because she was when she started, she was suicidal, and yeah, so she's incredible, and it's amazing just to see all over the world God's using it. So.
Indeed.
Yeah, thank you. All right, who else has a question or comment for Tori? David? Go ahead, Dave.
Maybe I'm being kind of stupid as a man, but why do you think it's so, I don't know if there's a way to answer why it's so emotionally difficult, or why it becomes such a crisis when you have an abortion? Is there, I mean, obviously, God intended us to keep our babies, but my wife, had miscarried several times, and even that was very difficult for her. So I just, as a woman, I don't know if you can answer that question, but.
Yeah, I mean, I think even women who are not mothers yet, we were created to be mothers. So even in Genesis, in Genesis, when God creates Eve, he calls her Eve, which means mother, before she ever has children. And so I think as women, that's what we're designed to be, as a mother. Whether we birth children or other things, I don't know. But when we take the life of our own children or lose our children through miscarriage, it's like losing a part of who we are, whether it's intended or not. And I think that's why it's so hard. And there are some people who are totally out of touch with that part of who they are. And those are the ones that'll say they don't regret it and all of that. But I think it's just a part of who we are. And so, that's my thoughts. Does that answer your question?
Ask my wife. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Tori. Yeah. So anybody else? We have a few minutes left before we wrap things up. Let me see if there's anybody who hasn't asked a question yet. Otherwise, we can go back to Paulo. You can unmute yourself.
Mhm.
There you go.
My impression of what makes it difficult for women. I've never had an abortion. And I can't have one. But my impression is this, that giving the pregnancy and giving birth produces or brings with it such an immense amount of energy and love and power. And then all of a sudden you have no object to receive it. Am I correct about that?
I mean, I would say that that's definitely a possibility. I mean, like I said, that's what we were created to do. So when our body is starting to do that, I do believe there is, that's our body's creating hormones and all the things, and then
Yeah.
it's gone, and I do think people feel like there's just a piece of the puzzle missing then, and you can't get it back, and so there's almost a death in a way of this mother identity that we have. And a lot of women will even, treat their living children differently because I never loved this other child, so I shouldn't love this one, or, or they'll overprotect and be like the helicopter mom, and, because they're so afraid they're going to lose their children. And so I think it really affects the way we see ourselves as mothers, because we know what we did is wrong, even if we don't want to admit it, and you're right. I think there's something, it was there and it's gone. And so, yeah, I think there's definitely something to that.
Right. Thank you. Richiko-san?
I never had an experience, but as I hearing from you, and you are a teacher and now you're teaching your children, I had the other Closey, he has been teaching young people to wait in a sexual relationship. And one of the teacher, well, she had a relationships and all kinds of things. And then she ended up become teaching children obstinate and basically pure love, love waits, or some certain Christians, they do those things. I'm wondering if you have come close to talk with those people. I know your job right now is so much, much things you're doing. But
one of the things that is so close to my heart is speaking to youth groups and young adults. And so whenever I'm given the opportunity, I do that. I haven't connected necessarily with those specific groups. Like, I know what you're talking about, the different groups. Can't remember the names of them at the moment, but I've heard of those and I would love to. But I always think, because I was 16 and I was in a youth group, like I went every Wednesday, and I was at church every Sunday. But nobody ever talked about abortion. Nobody ever talked about sex. Nobody ever really talked about anything like that in the church that I was at. And so when I go to churches and have the opportunity to talk to youth groups, I encourage them to wait. I'm like, God made it for marriage for a reason. It's going to be way better if you wait, but there's also these consequences if you don't. But also, telling them my story about abortion, because I just always wonder if I had even heard one person say, this is what abortion is, this is what it did to me, maybe I would have thought differently about it. But I had never even really heard about abortion at that point. So that's definitely one of the things that I want to tell, more. I want to be able to do that more. And yeah, I think those programs are so important, because abstinence really is absolutely the best way. For sure.
Thank you. Thank you for your work.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's amazing how God has called you and used you, Tori, all these years. And we want to thank you for your work on God's behalf.
Thank you. I did want to answer. So Vicky sent a message in the chat. I don't know if y'all saw that, but I was going to answer it. So she says her best friend had an abortion when she was 14. She's 68. And since she was 20, she's been depressed. I don't know what's the best way to bring this program of ours to her. She's only spoke about it once to her, and it was years ago. And I agree, Vicky, it probably is the reason she's still depressed. I could send you some literature that we have, and you could give it to her, and then you don't really have to say anything, just let her read it. And I could send it to anybody that wants it. I also have literature that you can give to your church so that they can have, like, it's speaking to the church, like, this is what you need to know about women who've had abortion. This is how you can help. But yeah, and she also said that this friend of hers aborted twins. And it is amazing how I think when someone's aborted twins, it's almost a double impact. We should be just as upset about one as we are as two, but there's something about when there's twins. There's actually a lot of people I know that were going to have an abortion, and they saw that it was twins on the ultrasound, and they chose not to because they couldn't abort two. And so when they do abort two, they feel doubly shamed and doubly, guilty and all of that. And so I wouldn't be surprised at all if that's the reason she spent most of her life being depressed. But we definitely have help for her, and we would love to get to know her. So I don't know if you want to, maybe, I don't know if you know Bergie or not, but if Bergie, is there a way you could get me some like addresses, and I'll mail some of our information?
Absolutely.
Okay.
And I know Vicky.
Okay.
We can maybe connect that lady with you, and she can join a class.
That would be wonderful. And we have a retreat coming up in June, and then another one in September, and those are completely free, and they're for all ages. We have women who it's been 60 years since their abortion, and then we have women who it's been 2 months. So we've had all. Yeah, but I'd love to share all of our information with anybody that wants it.
Maybe we can have that on our website. ACLA website available, when they watch the video, they can also download.
Yeah,
Because I
that'd be
think
great.
there'll be others like Vicky.
Oh, they're everywhere. They're everywhere. 1 in 4 women have an abortion, and it doesn't matter if you're inside a church or outside the church. That number's the same. So people think that the people in the church haven't dealt with this. They're just not telling anybody.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, that would be great to put some links on the website.
Yeah.
People can go to for help, and anybody here can reach out to Bergie directly if you like for now. Thank you. So Bergie, would you like to just wrap it up for this evening?
Well, it was so special. I really don't have any words to say. I'm touched by the love you shared with us, and I really appreciate the opportunity from here to go forward, that friends of us or acquaintances of us, that we can also help them and connect them with you, and they can benefit of that healing you are able to provide through the study and through the workshops. So I just want to say thank you. You've been amazing, and we hope we can support you in your development of your ministry. And it's
Thank you.
beautiful that through the Zoom, there are really no barriers in a sense, as long as people work it out. And maybe someday you can have translators, and you'll be speaking in a different language.
That would be great. Yeah.
Yeah. Here in this group, we have people from Brazil, we have people from Hawaii, we have people from all around America. And so you're reaching out to many, and through the website, you will even reach more.
Yeah.
So we
That's
just want to thank you, and we appreciate very much.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah.
Thank you, and
God bless you, and have a good night.
You too.
Good night, everyone.
Good night, everyone. See you next time.
Yeah.